Welcome to Right on the Money, the weekly talk show with interviews you can use to help you maximize your money and optimize your financial future. Before moving forward with any of the ideas discussed on the show, always consult your financial advisor, insurance professional, or tax consultant. Looking for financial help or a second opinion? We can help you in your search. And now, your host of Right on the Money, syndicated financial columnist and money-colored commentator, Steve Savant.
In this segment, we're talking about dying without a will after everything we've talked about with estate planning attorney Elizabeth Westby. Elizabeth, sometimes we don't hear the human tragedies, and we could talk about all the legalities, and that's good. All the planning, tactical issues, that's good. Try to be strategic about how we use wills and trusts, everything we've been talking about the whole show. However, there are real-life problems, and I want you to tell about this story. You talk about this stepchild story. Talk a bit about this, because this really puts kind of the flesh and bones on the legalese that we've been talking about for the last four segments.
That's right. And this is what happens. We don't think that we're going to be affected until some tragedy happens, and there really are horror stories from the grave. So a stepchild came to me. It's a full-grown woman, and her mother had passed away. And it wasn't her birth mother, it was her stepmother. Stepmother for 40 years. So by any right, they were mother and child. But she had even cared for her for the last 10 years of her life. But at this point, because she was not legally adopted, or because her stepmother didn't have
legally adopted.
Well,
wow.
You could only adopt when natural parents are out of the picture, or at least one natural parent.
Sure.
So there was an option for adoption. However, the stepmother could have had a estate plan where she could have listed her child in it, and then her child could have had standing to come forward and address any issues that she thinks are going on with the administration of the estate, or be a beneficiary and receive some benefits out of the estate.
So she, in fact, was cut out inadvertently.
Cut out, and by her own sister, which was a stepsister, but after 40 years, it is your sister, and her sister had come out of the woodwork and taken advantage of the fact that she was the bloodline and she could make these decisions. And even though perhaps it wasn't being done properly, my client had no recourse, absolutely no recourse.
I've noticed your second thing that you bring up here, you talk about beneficiary stories where the draft of the document was actually inaccurate. Now here, before you get into it, this is where the consumers have a freak out session. Where I'm hearing this, I'm like, oh my gosh, I thought I gave it to the attorney. I thought they did the document correctly. And now I'm gonna have to say there, boy, I hope he did this right. Because you're talking about here a drafting of a document that was done improperly.
Well, to save face for most attorneys here, it wasn't an attorney who had drafted the document, and I'm not going to point or name anybody, but it wasn't done through an attorney. And something so small in this example, so the gentleman had owned a business that operated a limousine service, and there was a woman, a friend, who had owned the limousines, but was letting him borrow them for his business. She had passed away. She had a will. She named him in the will, giving him these limousines. So he's thinking, great, I can operate my business. I'm not going to have any problems, until it started going through the probate process, because she only had a will and she didn't have a trust that would effectively transfer everything automatically. And he realized, oh, the debt is attached to these vehicles. So unless I can pay for the debt up front, I can't transfer title into my name. But if she had written that will where it had explained specifically that the debt should be taken care of out of the estate, he would have run with his vehicles, no problems to his company, and he would be operating now. He's no longer operating his business because of this.
Okay, so even though her intent was right.
That's right.
But the documents were wrong.
That's right, and he couldn't afford to keep the vehicles long enough to fight it. So he was stuck, and he had to surrender his rights to the vehicles.
That's brutal, actually.
It totally is. Yeah.
Okay. Now we're talking about when I'm thinking about unintended consequences. Now we're talking about interstate. Families are all over the United States now.
Yes.
They're residents of. They could be residents of community property states or regular states that don't have that service. So. What you were talking about a cousin story you said that you mentioned that was endemic of this issue of being out of state and succession issues. Talk about that.
Well, it's really sad, actually, and unfortunate. So the person who passed away was very young, 21 years old, and his mother had passed away just the year before, leaving a small life insurance policy. So for him, it was a little money. But he, at 21 years old, of course, you understand it, he wouldn't think to have an estate plan written. But because of that, his only living cousin couldn't take, because his estranged father is the only remaining first taker beneficiary under the intestate laws in Arizona. So, family spread out over the country. Cousin was like a brother to him, but couldn't go ahead and do anything for this person because the way the laws work and the fact that he didn't have an estate plan naming his cousin, bypassing his father who's been out of his life for 20 years, his father
reverted back to his father.
It goes back to his father.
Unbelievable. I mean, there are things, the way our culture is with our families, there's blended families, there's multiple relationships going on here. We need to be really clear about who gets what when, because intestate laws probably have not been updated in a long time.
Right.
So he who is ever the oldest in the bloodline tends to get it. So this is a huge issue that I think. Now, we've been talking about this all the show. Let's talk about Prince again, just one more time, get it out of our system. First of all, I remember listening to his song in 1999, minutes before it turned 2000. So I remember watching that. He was probably one of the best entertainers, next to Michael Jackson, I would have to say, live entertainment, strictly on the basis of entertainment. He was awesome. He was great. He not only has $300 million, just think about what I'm about to say here. He not only has $300 million in assets. Who knows if they release the thousands of songs that never made it into the public domain? I'm just saying. What kind of money will that generate, and who's going to get it? Who's going to, by the way, make the call of what gets on a CD and what doesn't?
Well,
this is where we're at.
So the first person who came forward was his sister, and she's trying to call herself the beneficiary, the main beneficiary, and because she's the only true blood sister, he has other half-siblings, I believe. She's trying to take the majority there. But it may not go there. Who knows? Again, Prince was a very private person. Apparently he had this vault, and no one's really sure what the contents are of the vault. But there's speculation that it is a ton of music that he wrote, but that he fully intended, according to his manager, to destroy. He didn't want other people to see it. But now, that's up for dibs, and you don't know what's going to happen to that. And I think that's just such a tragedy and very sad knowing, how removed am I? I'm just some person who's seen him a few times, and heard his music over the years. And knowing he's private and his wishes are certainly not going to be adhered to.
I'm looking at a list, lists of people, celebrities, government officials, people that you would know maybe for other reasons. They were infamous or famous for whatever reason or whatever, that died without an estate, would die without an estate plan, died without a will, died without a trust. And these are big names. I'm not talking about little names. These are big names. When we see people at that level who have the money to do this, I don't get it. Well,
I think that there is something special that happens with celebrities, government officials, people who are very wealthy, and they think that they're going to last longer than the rest of us. They think they have more time. They don't want to think about their ultimate demise, and they may not want to think about, well, who do I leave this to because I don't trust anybody.
Now, see, I understand that as a young person. I was completely offline on my own mortality when I was young, and I thought I was going to live forever and all those things. But I've actually come to terms with it now. Okay, fair enough. But you're saying I have people that are older, in their 70s and 80s, think they got time? And that they have time. They're going to escape the Grim Reaper here, and they don't have to do the docs for this?
Well, think about it. Some people who are either getting close to their 70s, they're still in the baby boomer stage. And those people are still working. They're probably thinking, well, I'm working, I'm fine today, I'm pretty healthy, nothing's happened so far. I'll get to that next year. I'll deal with it later. So I think because they don't want to think about the mortality, they don't want to handle the process, and it's really not that bad of a process. You get through it, and it's done, and you don't have to think about it again for another couple of years till you review it.
Okay, you say that with such glibness. Let's just test that theory. All right, I'm coming to you. I'm your client, and I actually did the right thing. I collected everything you told me to get. We didn't even hardly talk the first meeting. You just introduced ourselves. I felt comfortable with you. You said, here's what I need, and then I bring it to you. Then we have I would guess almost a pastoral kind of a talk. What do I want to happen? My wife says, here's what she wants to happen. We just vent our souls to somebody we just met. Just whatever. And I just, my desires, my wife's desire. We did all your paperwork, right? That's probably is that our second meeting? The first meeting, just how do you do? And this is what you need to collect. Second meeting is the collection meeting. I bring you all the things you told me to get. How many meetings are we going to get before it's done?
I think it depends on the individual completely and how prepared you are for this process. If you need more time and to know that you're choosing the right attorney and that this process is seamless for you, you may want to have 3 or 4 meetings before signing or executing the documents.
Well, that's all the time we have for today's show. I want to thank Elizabeth Westby for being my special guest. But before I go, I want you to remember what the good Reverend John Wesley once said. Make all you can, give all you can, save all you can. I'm Steve Savant. We'll see you next week right here on Right on the Money.
For more information on this week's money topics, just go to our website at www.rightonthemoneyshow.com and follow Steve's daily postings on Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn. When it comes to retirement, money management, small business, insurance coverage, college funding, or budgeting, we have the interviews you can use.